All right, everybody, what's up? I am here with Anne, or Leftist Blondie, and today we are going to be having a look at a review of a discussion that Anne had with Andrew Wilson. So we're doing a review of a review. So I don't know how it's going to go. We'll see how things go. But whenever anybody tries to go after my anti-realist compatriots, whether they be non-cognitivists or relativists or error theorists, I at least want to come to the rescue, even though I don't endorse any of those views in particular. Anne, I don't think you've even seen the video, right?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, so they might say super offensive things about you. We'll see.
I'm used to it.
Yeah, so we'll see. But do you want to, because you were on my channel, I think, before. I can't remember at this point, but can you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, all that stuff, whatever?
Yeah, my name is Anne. I go by Leftist Blondie, like the title says here. I do mainly politics, but I do delve into a little bit of philosophy and psychology as well, which is also Lance's crossover. So we kind of saw the original video and just wanted to review that because, yeah, we had this. I think Andrew and I had this discussion back in March of this year, and I'm still seeing videos like pop up where it's like Andrew Wilson destroys feminist on blah 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 or whatever. And so this one just happened to be a metaethics one, so here we are.
Cool. All right. Yeah, and I don't get into the politics stuff. I know that's something that you get into. Sometimes it almost seems like you're dragged into it grudgingly. I don't know.
Yeah, a little
But
bit.
yeah, but so I just focus on the meta ethics stuff. So Andrew Wilson doesn't, he mostly focuses on a whole bunch of other things, but occasionally the topic of meta ethics comes up. And whenever it comes up, that's where I feel compelled to step in. And, really, I guess something I'll say at the outset, and then we'll just dive into the video. We got to do a pretty short one today, is like an anti-realism as a meta-ethical position, this view that there's these no stance independent moral facts, whether you end up being a relativist or an expressivist or an error theorist, that view, it often seems to be people, and I don't want to dive too much into the politics, but conservatives, religious people, often in particular, have an animus towards the view that I find strange and largely unwarranted, because I don't actually think it's inconsistent with those views. I see it as almost entirely orthogonal to them. I think that the views merits stand on their own, independent of your religious beliefs. I mean, depending on specific theological views, maybe it's built in the realism. But I don't really see it as like a threat to theism or a threat to any particular political ideology. And so its alignment in the political sphere, I find a bit strange. So yeah, I mean, that's just one thing I want to comment on. Do you have thoughts on how it might relate to politics?
Yeah, I actually really agree. And I am not sure what the reason for that is. I don't know if it's just like an ego thing, like, oh, my God says thing bad, and if my God says thing bad, then thing bad, no matter what anyone think. And they kind of connect that somehow to believing that that's moral realism, even though you know this, and I'm sure a lot of people who watch your content know this, but that's not necessarily a moral realist view to say like God think thing bad, therefore thing bad. That's actually more of in line with like a subjectivist or some sort of anti-realist view. But I think I'm not sure how, if there's any way in the future to like divorce those two things from each other, from like my God think thing bad, therefore thing bad, no matter what anyone else think, even though it's based off of what person, just all powerful person think. I don't know how to divorce those things, but I think Christianity and other religions probably just tend to also go hand in hand with conservatives. So it's like a chain link of things that are just kind of interconnected for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, one way of doing this is to pull apart what it is that makes moral realism distinct, which is the view that there are facts about what's morally right or wrong that don't depend on anybody's stances, including technically if God had a stance in the conventional sense, they wouldn't depend on God's stance. Now, if you don't think of God as a being, or you don't think that God, if you don't think that God like has intentional states or a mind in the same sense humans do, that might create some complications. But I think part of it comes down to when people think of relativism, they do a couple things. One is they associate relativism with this kind of crude, hyper-tolerant attitude you sometimes see in universities and in certain sorts of atmospheres where people are like, we can't impose our standards on other people. We have to tolerate all cultures and practices. And there's like a general, like if people over there wear a different hat than me, or they dress in a different color, or they celebrate a different festival than me, like, I think we should tolerate that. That's innocuous. That's benign. But if there were people that are like, hey, we need to like round up everybody named Steve and throw them into a volcano, I got problems with that. I'm not for like being, oh, well, that's just their practice. That's just their custom. But you will run into people that are like, who are we to judge? Yeah, I'm going to judge. I don't want people thrown in volcanoes. I don't care. Like if you're over, oh, but they're on the other side of this invisible boundary. So it's okay for them to throw people. I don't think that. And so a lot of it is that people, it would be easy for me to say they caricature relativism, but it's not much of a caricature if there's actual people that act and think that way. Like there are people that have a bizarro relativism where they're like really, they're okay with genocide or they're okay with something horrific, but relativism doesn't have to be that way. And I'm sure you've encountered relativists like this probably, right?
Yeah, I often think of this comic, and I wish I knew who the artist was that did this. It was an animation, where it's two politicians, like cartoon politicians, standing on a stage, and one of them says, "I want good thing," and the whole crowd cheers, and they're like, "Oh my god, amazing! You want good thing," and then the other guy goes, "Oh, I want good thing too," and one of them says to the other one, "Okay, yes, but how pay for good thing?" And the whole crowd just goes, oh, "He want bad thing, he want bad thing," and so that's the way that I see it. A lot of the times is you some of these caricatures are in fact real people, unfortunately, and it's just the way that life is, but you can't chop up a whole group where you know that there's a lot of political diversity. I don't know if you've seen, there's actually studies done on like political diversity within like the right and the left generally in America. There's a lot of political diversity even within each group. Now, which group I think has better political diversity, you know, that's something I talk about, but yeah, I think a lot of it is like that. Like people only tend to see the caricatures of what the other side is.
Yeah, and to be fair, the caricature should be criticized. Like if there are people that
Yes.
are leveraging metaethics to encourage complacency for like human rights abuses and atrocities, I am not only am I not on board on that, I am as aggressively opposed to that as anybody reasonably could be. So I don't want to defend that, and I don't defend that. But I do think that there are characterizations or conceptions of relativism or anti-realism more broadly that are no threat to views on any sane view on any side of the political spectrum. So I mean, I don't know if there's much more to say besides that, other than to just say, yeah, look, if there's instances or manifestations of relativism that are bad, criticize those, but that shouldn't impugn the whole view. For the same reason, if we found like one really insane Christian fundamentalist that said like kill everyone that's not my side, that wouldn't be representative of other Christians, and we shouldn't impugn Christianity because of what that person says. Like, so it's the same sort of thing. You don't indict a view because it has some fringe representatives, that are really terrible.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I want good thing. Yeah, I see the comment. I want good thing, and then the crowd is like, "Yay!"
Yeah, I see people in the chat. Oh, let me give the I had written this up earlier. So I'll give out the land salute. I'll just make that quick as a chat. And are you ready to get into the video?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right, here we are. I don't know why it's got weird stuff up there, but let's play it.
I am arbiting is my morals, my moral stances.
So then the only way we can have good is if it's good to you.
Yeah, of course.
So then if that's the case, then all things, you are the ultimate arbiter.
All right, let's dive in. Today we've got Andrew Wilson going head-to-head with a woman who seems determined to redefine rights until the word has no meaning. It's like watching someone play philosophical Jenga, pull out enough blocks, and the whole tower collapses.
Now that's interesting because doesn't Wilson in other places say he doesn't really believe in rights, or he sees them as socially constructed or something?
Yeah, it seems like at one point he's trying to point out and say like, oh, rights, if they're a social construct, kind of mean nothing. Then there's really nothing. The only thing that actually matters is what we put into law, but the law in 99% of the time is purely dictated based off of like what people have socially constructed that the law should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know enough about Andrew's views on that stuff to speak to them. If I ever have a discussion with him, I'll ask him to clarify his stance on rights. But anyway, let's get into what else they have to say.
So let's break it down, one contradiction at a time.
Force is the way that the rights are protected.
Well, it's the only way they can really exist.
No, they do exist. You admitted that concepts exist, right? So like somebody can.
I can grant that they exist, sure.
Right. So they do exist without force, quote unquote.
Well, no, not actualizing them though.
So you didn't get clear what you mean by actualizing.
Yeah, so if you want to have the right to freedom of speech and there's nobody around, I suppose you would have the right to freedom of speech because you're the only mind which has this concept in it. But if you come into contact with another mind who says you don't have the right to freedom of speech, and actually has a right here and which one doesn't, we can't, right? We just say you have a concept in your mind and you have a concept in your mind. But this rights thing, right? This thing doesn't really exist. Just this concept is what exists.
See, you keep saying it doesn't really exist. Of course it exists. Like you said, if you're on the island and nobody's there to infringe upon that right, even if somebody does infringe upon that right, you could still say, well, that person has the right to life. They have the right to speech.
Then people have the right to kill other people if they want to.
Well, that's not what I said. Per that person, they
No, it is what you're saying.
They would
It's an
to them
extension of what you're
that
saying.
statement would be true.
Okay.
To them.
If it is the case that collectively society decides that they have a right to enslave women, they do in fact have that right in reality to do that, don't they?
If you're saying that they're acting on what they believe is to be a right, then yeah. That's what they're doing. That's trivially
So then
true.
what
but
is...
that doesn't... So
so
these
then
are
what is-
descriptive claims, though.
Yeah,
I'm not interested
well,
in
right now
descriptive
we're just
claims.
making sure that we have this. So I just want to make sure I got this right and that we're not speaking past each other. Rights are real as concepts. Concepts are real. Yes? So therefore, if it is the case that conceptually people want to enslave all women and they call that concept a right, then they would have the right to enslave women and that would be a real right that they would have, right?
To them,
Yes.
what you're missing is the index. So like when I say
The index. This is where people start throwing academic words around to hide the fact that they're saying nonsense.
That's what made me want to review the video.
I don't even know what that means. I mean, I explain what I mean here. It's not like I just like use the word and then I just didn't reference it again and didn't really make sense in the way that I used it. I mean, does he have a critique of the way I use the word index?
Well, you use the word index, it's an academic term, and you're using that allegedly to hide the fact that what you're saying is nonsense.
Where's the evidence of that? That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so when I characterize relativism, I started using a characterization in terms of indexes. Do you know where you got that characterization from? Because it's not a common one, but I think it's a particularly good one, and it's one I really lean into and emphasize when describing relativism.
I think that there was something. This was a while ago, back in one of our psych classes. Like we talked about things being like indexed to the individual, like for someone who maybe or like indexed to cultures, basically. So like the way that mental disorders are classified. I have a bachelor's in psych, and maybe this will kind of clarify that for people why I'm talking about psychology. For mental disorders or mental illnesses, and I have a problem with this, but this is just the way that it's done in the field of clinical psychology, is those are diagnosed and categorized, indexed to cultures, and sometimes even indexed to subcultures or communities or things like that, where in one culture, one symptom of an illness might actually not be a symptom of an illness because it's normalized in that culture, and it's culturally, there's a relevancy there to that culture. So that's kind of where I picked up on that type of language, I think. And I think it applies really well here, like with morals, especially in like the anti-realist space. If you talk about like moral language, like good and bad, a lot of the times it helps, at least me, to think about it in like an indexical way. Like, okay, well, what does the person speaking really mean?
That it's really interesting. You got it from a totally different place than I did. I picked up on that way of framing things from the supplemental section of the entry on, I think, moral anti-realism from Richard Joyce from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy from like 10 or 15 years ago or something. So a very specific place.
Oh, really?
I still saved and cite that article. I have it open in another window, so I'm going to plop it in here for the chat so they could all see it. It's really worth having a look at. But here, I'll just read the first part of this. Richard Joyce says, relativism holds that moral claims contain an essential indexical element, such that the truth of any such claim requires relativization to some individual or group. Now you could call indexical like an academic term, but it's certainly not used to conceal the fact that we're talking nonsense. And the reason for that is that indexicality is a very common, it's a familiar feature of language that does not only occur in an academic context, it occurs in almost every conversation anybody has ever had with anybody else. Why? Well, here are some common indexical terms. I, you, me, this, that, there, here. Now, what makes these terms indexicals? Well, indexicals are terms the truth of which varies depending on their context of usage. So when I say I refer to me. When you say I, you refer to you. If I say this, like if I point at one thing, this, the meaning varies based on what I'm pointing at. Indexicals are something everybody already, like 4-year-olds understand indexicals. So this is not some nonsensical academic term. There's like nothing that could be more familiar in everyday language. I mean, it's obviously a bit of hyperbole, but it's a completely ordinary feature of the way that ordinary language works. That term, we use indexicals all the time. What the relativist is saying is simply that when you say like stealing is wrong, it's implicit in that you're saying stealing is wrong according to my standards or according to the standards of my culture. You're just not explicitly saying it. That's why it has an implicit indexical component. And implicit indexicals, like, look, does anybody think that when someone is like takes a bite of food and they go, "Oh, this is delicious," that they must be speaking on behalf of, like, they're reporting on the intrinsic tastiness properties of the food? Yeah, they're telling you that they find it delicious. But it would be like saying too much. It'd be a little weird for someone to like take a bite of pizza and go, "I find this to be delicious." That's a weird way to talk because everybody already knows what they mean when they say this is delicious. So I was really puzzled that this was flagged as this like nonsense when the term you used is a completely everyday term. I don't know if you had further thoughts on that.
There's also tons of other places. I mean, sure, you could say, like, even if you just restricted it to an academic field, just because something's used like in academia, does that mean that it's supposed to be concealing nonsense? Sociologists use like relative terms. They don't always use the word like this is indexed to blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they'll say this is the norm for this culture, or this is some practice that's specific to this culture. Anthropologists will use these terms all the time. I don't know if even I'm trying to think, maybe medical fields probably also use terms like that. But the social sciences use indexical language all the time because, sometimes things are very specific to different cultures or individuals or societies or whatever. This is not new.
Yeah, it's not even particularly obscure or academic. I guess the point you're making is that even if it was academic, so what? That doesn't make it nonsense.
Yeah.
So it's not it's like distinctively an academic term, and even if it were, it wouldn't be nonsense anyway. So this is a strange objection, I don't know.
I think it's a grasp at straws. Really, it's a nothing burger.
But I often see people react pretty negatively to what's frustrating is someone will want you to unpack some concept. And you're talking about a metaethical position. Metaethics is an abstract academic topic. Is it somehow inappropriate to use abstract academic concepts to explain what it means? Like, just imagine an analog to like someone asking you to explain quantum mechanics, and you start talking about wave functions or something, and they're like, wave functions? Why are you talking academic nonsense?
You must be trying to hide how stupid you are or something, or how wrong you are.
So how dare you use academic terminology to explain an academic concept? It just seemed, grasping at straws. It's not a good objection, but let's not dwell on it too much. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
If you need a glossary to explain your position, maybe your position isn't as airtight as you think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You might need a glossary to explain complicated abstract concepts.
Like when I say I have a right, I am talking, like I said, about more so a belief or a value sometimes is what I'm referencing. So when somebody says, like, even if someone was in prison wrongfully, maybe, like they didn't actually commit a crime, but it was believed that they committed a crime, and that person said, I have the right to be free. Now, they're not saying something nonsensical. You understand, like, what that person is saying. They're saying, you know, I desire to be free. It's wrong. And what they mean by, you know, it's wrong is it goes against their values for them to be
it just goes against
imprisoned.
It goes against their preferences, right?
Yeah, in that case, so that statement is true.
Yeah, sure, but it's equally true to say, no, we're going to keep you a slave.
Not to that person.
Yeah, not to that person, but just to the other people.
But once again, not to that person, and not to me, certainly.
But if it is the case that rights themselves, being a value of the concept of the mind, these concepts are real, then that would mean that all people who were slaves had the right to be free. That's true. But also that all people who enslave people have the right to enslave them, and that's also equally true, correct?
If what you mean, like we can substitute.
No, this is what you mean.
Yeah, if you let me finish sentences, I can do that.
Okay.
So when you have the people who are enslaving other people, if what you mean by those people saying, I have the right to enslave these people, is that those people are, you know, substituting out their words for, like, I have the value that these people are enslaved, then to them, that is true. They do, in fact, have that value.
So, wait, I'm confused now. Now I'm actually confused on your view. You said a right is just a belief?
Okay. I get why Andrew's confused. Her definition of a right keeps sliding between concept, belief, and value. It's like trying to pin Jell-O to the wall. You can see the shape, but nothing actually sticks. And that's the problem. If a right is just a belief, then every contradictory belief is equally valid. Slavery? Oppression? Theft? They're all just beliefs clashing, with no objective way to say one is wrong. Andrew's not lost. He's pointing out the moral absurdity hiding in plain sight, and she's standing right in it.
Yeah.
Anything to say about that?
That's interesting narration. I feel like I'm watching a movie. But the interesting part is he said something like, "Oh, it's kind of being thrown at a wall and slipping and sliding between definitions between a belief and a concept." I think at least a lot of beliefs can be categorized also as concepts, or maybe you can have a belief about a concept or something. Like maybe I'm trying to think of a way to narration AI slap. I think there might be a fair criticism here to be made about the preciseness of the language there in calling a right a concept or a belief. I think from the get-go, I probably should have stuck with the language of a belief, or maybe because I think there is something like a concept or a construct where a right is something legal or a right is something like an agreement between two people. But I think there's also kind of something there like, oh, I believe or I feel it's just that I am free or something like that. So there may have been an interchanging there of the usages, but I think in the conversation at any point, it's clear which one I'm talking about because I specifically substitute out, okay, a right in this case, the person is saying, I want to be free. So it's very clear there, like if you just listen and say like, okay, well, in this case, you're talking about where somebody's desires are, then that's clear. There shouldn't really be too much confusion there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, well, I mean, first of all, there is the concept of a right or rights, or multiple concepts about like what rights are and what their nature is. And there are beliefs about what rights people have. That like those two things can and almost have to coexist. It'd be really weird for people to have beliefs about rights, but they don't have concepts about rights. So
Yeah.
you could have both.
I don't even know what that would mean.
Right. You have beliefs about rights, but there's no concepts. Maybe there's some way of construing the notion of concept where you're an eliminativist about concepts, but you think people have beliefs. And then you cash out beliefs in like behavioristic terms. There might be some way of pulling that off. I don't know. But like typically, whether you're referencing the concept of a right or a beliefs about rights or whatever, someone can pick up on which one you're referencing from the context. This is something we do all the time And when you're talking about philosophy, sometimes you're drawing a distinction between a concept and beliefs about the concept, or different conceptions of the concept. Sometimes, for instance, there's a difference between mentioning a term and using a term. So if I'm talking about a term, it doesn't mean I'm employing the term. That's an important distinction. Maybe you were a little sloppy in what you were saying at some point in here, but I don't know that a little lack of hyper precision in precisely what you're saying would justify like presenting your position as like incoherent. Most people talk in somewhat imprecise ways most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think people talk in very imprecise ways all the time. And I can just see that even in like, I think a benefit of like getting really into philosophy the last like 2 years has shown me that like there's a lot of the times where I have conversations with people, and then like halfway into the conversation, I have to be like, wait, what do you mean by this thing that you're saying? Like, what, and you have to get clear when you thought that you were clear the whole time. So I agree. I think that the harping on the language there and then painting the language out to be bad faith, as if I'm trying to do this like sneaky thing with morality. Like if I just use this jello-like concept, I don't have to stick to any real worldview or anything like that. I can just slime around like he says, or whatever language he used.
Yeah, this has become a recurring theme. And I don't know if this was an AI video, or whether someone scripted this and wrote it and had a machine narrate it, or whether someone just has a beautifully smooth narrator voice. I have no idea. But there was enough in here that I thought, I'm ambivalent about whether it's a good idea to review stuff like this, because it does draw attention to it, and you might think that that's bad. But on the other hand, my primary crusade is making sure people accurately represent metaethics online. So I don't know. I am seeing the comments from people that are disputing whether we should be reviewing this. I don't know if that's something that you have thoughts on.
I probably platform and respond to much worse people online, so I don't really have too many qualms about that. The political spaces I engage with and probably give too much attention are probably people far worse than this guy. So I'm not too concerned.
Well, I don't actually know what the channel is, so I don't know who created this. I just hear stuff about anti-realism and I respond to it without regard for who's saying it. Okay, let's get into a little bit more of the video, because I know we don't have a ton of time.
Mm-hmm.
But do let me know if you have commentary, because I'm pausing this. But if you want me to pause it, like I don't know, like yell at me, like pause or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, well, when you were talking about like concepts, yeah.
Okay, if it's just a belief, then it's an equally true belief that these people over here, their right to enslave you exists.
It's equally true, and because the wording, I think people use this wording in a weird way sometimes. What would be more accurate to say is that person desires.
I do have a thought. The end of that, where he says, "Oh, then every idea, everything is completely valid." And I'm sure you're probably tired of repeating this, so I'll repeat this for you. When people say things like that, valid. If relativism true, then murdering babies equally as valid as giving $5 billion to homeless people every year. Those ideas are equally as valid and true to those people if both of those people believe that those things are good. That is not true. And that is as ridiculous as saying that, well, if I say that I really love my Impossible Whopper that's on the way through DoorDash right now, then that means Lance Bush also loves Impossible Whoppers. I don't know if you do, but that's like saying then that must be true for Lance, that Lance loves Impossible Whoppers from Burger King. And that stands independently true, whether or not Lance thinks that it's true. Or that it's, equally as good as Lance's opinion about shit tasting good or something like that. Like that would just be ridiculous. No one would live their life that way.
Yeah, there's this thing that people will say if you're a relativist, where they'll say something like, if you're a relativist, then you consider all positions equally valid. I don't even know what they mean by valid. So like valid has a specific meaning in psychology, where it's how well a measure measures what it's intended to measure. Valid has a specific meaning in logic, where it refers to the structure of like formal arguments, and whether or not if the premises are true, they entail the conclusion or support the conclusion or whatever. what does it mean in this context? Because it seems like there might be a kind of normative undertone or connotation to it, where the idea is if I consider other people's positions equally valid, that in some way I'm condoning them, or I'm allowing them, or I'm not opposed to them. And so if there was a person that's okay with like torturing babies or throwing puppies in volcanoes, because that position is as valid as mine, this would somehow invalidate or make it hypocritical or against my own alleged principles to object to that person doing that. And that's not an implication of at least one form of relativism, appraiser relativism. And are you familiar with the agent appraiser distinction? I don't know if we talked about it before.
It's been a really long time since I've read metaethics. Is it the difference between like the truth of the moral claims are specific to like the agent versus like specific to somebody, the person appraising the situation, basically, like from afar? Like you can
Right.
have like an isn't ideal observer like an appraiser theory?
Not exactly. Ideal observer, you could put it in a category of these like constructivist theories. I would call them like and Joyce calls them like a relation designating account, where technically they purge the relativistic part because now the facts aren't indexed to a particular standard because there's only one correct standard, but they're still stance dependent.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so it's not quite that. What you said before captures it perfectly fine. So the idea is when you're judging an action, right? So there's a person and they're going to go steal from somebody. On the agent relativist position, the question you ask is, well, does the person that's about to steal, did they consider it okay for themselves to steal? If they do, then it's okay for them to steal, period. And that has really weird implications, because now if you're observing them steal, you would go, oh, is it wrong for them to steal? Well, that depends. Are they okay with stealing? Oh, they are? Then it's okay for them to steal. And so that might carry this weird implication that if someone's okay with baby torture, there might be a sense in which you got to be okay with them committing baby torture. You'd at least have to acknowledge it's good for them to torture babies, which is weird. That like I would not endorse a position like that. But appraiser relativism says that when judging the person that's about to steal's actions, you ask, well, what are my standards as the person judging them? And I consider it wrong, and so it's wrong. And appraiser relativism simply doesn't have these implications that everybody's views are equally valid. The idea of them being equally valid according to what standard? If you're a relativist, there is no non-relative standard according to which you would judge all standards as equally valid. You can only judge the standards according to your standard or some other standard or whatever. But you know, the moment you're judging according to a standard, it's your standard. And so if you're an appraiser relativist and you think anybody stealing or anybody torturing babies is doing something morally wrong, then there's no inconsistency in opposing literally anybody doing it. So appraiser relativists do not have to think other people's moral positions are, you know, quote unquote, equally valid. Whatever that means. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's I do get stuck on that a lot when people say that, because I quite sometimes don't even know like what route to go down. Like, do you go down the route where you go like, well, what do you mean by valid? And then they go like, oh, well, equally good. Okay. And then you get to the index problem, like, well, good to who? Good to a stand, like some stance independent standard, or good to like Joe Schmo or something? Like how, you know, you run into that problem, or you can go down the other problem that you just discussed, where like, okay, well, you're still getting into like the good to who part, just with less steps almost.
Yeah, it's almost like people, when they're challenging relativism, seem to smuggle in non-relativist views, attribute them to the relativist, and then treat the relativist as if they themselves are stuck in some contradiction or have some huge problem, when the relativist is like not committed to those presuppositions.
Yeah.
It's
and
weird.
I think there is real criticisms that you could make of relativism, like agent relativism, but these just aren't them.
Well, yeah, and then also I haven't met and like discussed, like I've seen people say like online, like, hey, if that culture thinks it's okay for that culture. That sounds like agent relativism, and I don't like that. But I don't actually know any agent relativists. And you know, the Stanford Encyclopedia entry on relativism actually says we're just going to assume appraiser relativism for the purpose of this article unless I specify otherwise. And it says it's the more standard of the two. I don't know what they mean by that. Like, how did they determine it's more common? But I see very little discussion from any critic of relativism about appraiser relativism. It seems like they only criticize agent relativism. This is very strange.
I suspect there might be something like people who do anthropology or sociology might have more agent relativistic views, because I see that a lot from people in those, both not only in the online spaces where you see people who are just like talking about social issues or whatever, and they say, well, it's okay because it's their culture, or it's okay because it's blah blah blah. But I very scarily see that in academia, in like academic institutions a lot, where I hear things be kind of like packaged in a way that is very agent relativistic. So that I have met some of those people, and they have some crazy views. But
Yeah,
I'm
I
not one
haven't
of
met
them.
anybody like that. And to be clear, and that's why I said I've seen them online. I am not denying people like that exist, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the view that if some culture does something and they're okay with it, then it's okay for them. I don't agree.
Yeah.
I'm not on board with that. Well, I mean, I'm not technically a relativist either. But um, just why do critics of relativism only focus on that one? Maybe in their defense, that's the kind of relativism that really stands out and that they're seeing all the time. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, let me just criticize them. And I get it. Like, look, if I see a bunch of crazy people storming the Capitol, I'm probably going to mainly criticize those people. And I might
Right. Yeah.
accidentally sometimes lump some of those people in with other people who didn't do that. So I understand like the how people think about it, but it still doesn't make it fair. And it's not fair when I do it, you know?
Yeah. All right. Let's see how much more of this we could get through. We only got a few minutes left. Wow, this is
I
blazing
know.
by the time. All right.
Whew.
Let's see what else we got here.
Hires this, they value this, or they prefer this.
Okay, so what gives them the right to something?
That's what I'm saying, that the right is. So like
So
usually
it's just
when
a
you
belief.
talk about, well,
Yeah.
you can talk about rights as social contracts, and maybe they're violating a social contract in that way. But when I say like I have a right to be free, a lot of the times what I'm expressing is like, you know, a very strong desire or something like
Yeah,
that.
just a belief that you have.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what those people are saying. So if you're just saying it is true that those people, to them, it is true, I have the right to enslave this person. And if you substitute what they mean by that by I desire to enslave these people or I have a strong will to do so, then that's truly true. You don't disagree with that, certainly.
Well, with your view, no. This concede that the right is real, that people collectively have the right to enslave people, and that is real. Concepts are real.
And what you
this
mean
belief is real.
by right is it's real in the sense that they do in fact believe or value that thing. Yeah, that is
Now,
true,
is
that they in fact believe and value
is
those
that
things.
belief that you can hold people in slavery? Is that a belief which I mean, obviously you're against it, right? I'm not
Right.
saying you're not.
Of course.
But that belief, this value which is real, this concept which is true, they actually do have the right to do this. Is that morally worse than your view that they shouldn't?
To me, yeah.
To you, and that's it, only to you, right? Because it doesn't
Yeah, of
make you feel
course.
good, right?
If I'm, well, you can say words like that, like you can say, doesn't make me feel good. That would be more in line with somebody who takes some like emotivist view on that type of thing. But I'm fine with saying that, you know, there's a proposition that, you know, that is wrong. And by that, I mean that, you know, that's something that goes against my values.
Got
or
it.
my desires or preferences
So
in a very strong way.
now we've untangled all of that. This argument actually becomes much easier. So the goal of feminism is to push people or push women specifically towards materialism and not duty. And I think that the belief of people in duty is much more important than the belief of people in materialism. So I think that the idea of having duties to nation, the idea that having duties to family, the idea that having duties to community far outweigh the idea of the right to pursue whatever trivial, meaningless material pursuit that you have. That duty should come first, and that society would look better if they did.
Now, here's where Andrew.
Okay. I mean, he pivoted to talking about your specific views, which I think was the main topic. So I think getting
Yes.
back on track to talk about what the conversation was about, I don't see anything wrong with that. It looks like he spent a lot of time focusing on getting clarity on your view on that. But what I'm puzzled by, at least at this point, is it looks like he got a lot of information about your metaethical view and then moved on to the other stuff. Did he not? He would know, and I don't know. did he like not see an avenue of attack at that point and then dropped it, or did he just want clarity, was satisfied with your answer, and moved on? I don't know what. I mean, you were in this conversation, so what do you think is happening here?
I think it was the first, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna try. I think there was something like, I'm gonna try to make this seem like it kind of segues into the main topic, and then but the reason why I'm segueing it into the main topic is because I don't know the avenue of the attack anymore from here. So I have to make, there had to be like a smooth transition. So I think that that was the main goal, because later on, I think that part of the conversation, and we did a full review, gets brought back up. Like, he brings it back up for some reason, and then he goes, "Well, I still really don't know what you mean by this." And it kind of indicated to me, like, okay, wait. So you didn't know what we meant by this. You thought that it was super relevant to the main topic, but instead of completing that and at least making sure that you fully understand it, you just moved on to the next thing that is maybe somehow related. And we talk about here, the discussion kind of turns into like, well, if men believe they have the right to enslave women, then they just can. And I I don't disagree with that. That sure, they probably could. That would be really, really bad. I would really, really disapprove of that. And we kind of get to a stalemate in that part of the conversation where I go, now what? Like, now what? Okay, yep, you've told me that men could do something really bad. Now where do we go from this? And he's like, well, they could just do it if they wanted to. And I'm like, yeah, people do evil things all the time. People do things I really disapprove of all the time. People murder people. So then what? And it just kind of got to that point where he was like, well, they have the right to. And I was like, it just, that conversation snowballs and just keeps going back into that circle of like, well, they really have the right, but you don't think that they have the right, but that's only to you, so it's not important.
Yeah, yeah. One thing is, I have seen his conversations with other people that defend anti-realist or nihilist or relativist views, and I do have to say, a lot of those people do quite a bad job. Like, they're not great at defending these views, and I think it's unfortunate that, on the one hand, I could see why he explores the avenues of attack that he does in those conversations, because the people have vulnerabilities, and I do think, in the way that they're defending or expressing the view, I do think that that can give the impression that meta-ethical anti-realist views aren't as defensible as they are. Basically, I think he's largely taken on mostly people that are fumbling and not doing a great job of defending their views. And in this case, I thought your answers were quite good here, which is why I was surprised to see 2 or 3 commentaries on your remarks on metaethics where they seem to think that you were not doing a good job. I also did a review of someone else that I thought did quite a good job, that was on whatever. They did fine. And then people were like, look how terrible they did. And I was like, no, they did fine. It's so weird.
Yeah.
You must have seen this in the comments, right? You'll see a debate, not even necessarily one you're in, but maybe you've seen this with you, where people on one side think that the other side got totally smashed, and then the people on the other side think that side got totally smashed. I mean, 1, have you witnessed this? 2, has this happened in your case? And 3, what do you think of what's going on there?
I hope it doesn't happen in my case, but I suspect it probably does, and I really hate that so much. Because if I hope that the ideas that I convey come across in the ways that I mean them to, and I hope that I am, well, what I always hope that I'm right about things, but I know that I'm not, and I know that I can't always convey things really well, and I know that I do. I mean, even in this conversation, I've admitted, like, yeah, there probably with the rights concept was a better way that I could have worded that, and I would hate for somebody to watch this video and go, oh, Anna explained rights perfectly fine, and there's absolutely zero criticism to make, and they're the best debater I've ever seen in the whole wide world. And I would hate that to happen, but I'm sure it does. Andrew Wilson just has a probably, I don't even know, 10, 20 times bigger platform than I do. And so there's the unfortunate part of when you have a platform that big, sadly, you're just going to get those people, especially in a space where you prop yourself up and encourage it. I don't know if you know this, Andrew has a debate course that he actually sells. He teaches people how to debate and charges them. So it's interesting. It is the type of like he's made himself that type of person where he is like this figure. People like him for political reasons, and because they like him for political reasons, they seem to think that that translates to anything he talks about, regardless of what it is, whether it's philosophy, whether it's science, whether it's, I don't know, anything else, psychology, things like that, dating or whatever. If he has good political opinions, that means he has good other opinions. And I think we do this with people actually a lot. I don't know why we do this. We do this with attractive people. We think attractive people have good opinions for some reason. We think they're like good people. Or we think like if somebody's good at one thing, then that must mean they're good at X, Y, Z other thing. And that's just obviously not true in all cases.
Yeah, I try to be I specialize in like two things, and I try to avoid commenting on too many other things, but I worry that if I commented on things that were outside my domains of knowledge, that people would take me more seriously than I should. I especially worry about that with credentials. Like if you have a doctorate, I think people are more likely to take you seriously, even when they shouldn't. And that's a problem. But you have, I have to be careful about saying that because I don't want to play into the like anti-intellectual and anti-credentialist groups that are dismissive
Yeah.
for like political or ideological reasons that I think aren't warranted. So, I'm critical of certain aspects of academia, and then I see people that are critical of academia that I think are a bit tinfoil hat, and I don't want to be associated with them either. So it does put me in an awkward position a lot of the times.
Yeah, it's hard to find the in between to where you're like, I don't want to draw in these crazies, but I also don't want to draw in these crazies who are on the opposite side, like thinking I'm on their side or something. Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, it's tough. Now we're stopped at this point. Do you want to do another minute or two of this and wrap it up there, or do you want to close it out here?
Yeah, I can go until 7:10, 7:15-ish. So
Okay.
I'm good for a bit.
I don't think we're going to finish it because there's another 10 minutes. So that's too bad. But this always happens with my videos, whatever. Okay. Yeah. And someone mentioned like Sabina and the Weinstein. Yeah. And that's who I have in mind. Like Sabina has, that's a whole can of worms. I'm not going to get into that. That's too much of a digression. Let's go back to the video.
Andrew's on fire. Because duty to family, to community, to nation actually requires sacrifice and responsibility. Materialism, on the other hand, is just chasing stuff. And somehow, that gets celebrated more than duty. It's like we've swapped building civilization for collecting things that don't matter. And Andrew's pointing it out loud and clear.
Well, that's okay. There's a few things here. That moves from a descriptive claim to like a applied claim, or like a normative claim, or a pragmatic thing. And then there's the other type of thing where it's like, you say feminism has like pushed us towards these things, towards these material.
Yeah, do you want a demonstration for that?
Well, really quickly, you think that
I could make a note on this because I think that we're probably going to get really into the feminist stuff and less away from the philosophy stuff. There was one comment that the guy made at the very end there that if for some reason, if subjectivism, which I wasn't fully committing myself here to subjectivism, I am fine with saying that the view that I gave came off very well similar to subjectivism, and that's fine. I don't think it's a wild or outlandish view at all. But the comment he makes is like, if subjectivism, then for some reason materialism, meaning you don't care about anyone or anything, you only care about things and money and material goods. I have no idea where that came from. I care a lot about a lot of people. I know a lot of people who care about a lot of other people who don't believe that there's these stance independent moral facts floating out there in space. I donate to charity. I don't donate to charity because I care about things. I donate to charity because I care about other people subjectively. It's my preference that people who I donate to have better lives because I donate to them. It's not like, oh, I'm just, that's just so strange. I guess it's just if you're a subjectivist, you are Barbie girl in a Barbie world and all you care about is your dream house and that's it, I guess.
Yeah, I have sometimes seen people interpret subjectivism, relativism, or anti-realism as some type of like egoism or as entailing that, like, because people will say, oh, so you only care about your interest. Oh, so you only care about your values. And they interpret that to mean something like you are like self-interested in the sense that the only things that you value are things that will directly affect you personally. And that's just not the case. So a subjectivist could also be a total altruist and say, look, I only value my values, but the thing that I value is everybody else's welfare. And so I'm going to sacrifice for their sake. Entirely consistent. It's just not what the view is. And that's just a straightforward misunderstanding of the position. And I have seen that before. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the meta-ethical anti-realist views seem to be to magnetically attract misunderstandings. And even if I spend all day sort of prying the chunks of metal off and clearing away the misunderstandings and confusions, they just crop up like weeds over and over and over. I mean, I've been doing this for 2 years. I don't have big reach, but just the same mistakes over and over and over. The big one right now that's like seems to have gone like semi-viral, at least within like the debate community, is another recurrence of theists saying, if atheism is true, then you can't have objective morality. It's impossible to have objective morality. They don't have good arguments for this. There's not a good rationale for this. Almost nobody in philosophy, not that I give too much credit to it, thinks this way. And yet this belief persists for whatever reason. And it's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, there's also the conflation between like atheist and subjectivist. So like if atheist, then subjectivist for some reason. And I know plenty of, I mean, I think they're wrong, but most of my friends are atheists, and I think probably a few of them, at least I know, are more realist. And I think they're crazy, but I love them and they're great. But their views aren't like nonsense gibberish. And a lot of their views make way more sense than theists who claim to be moral realist even. So that's, I mean, and maybe that's just me being biased, but I don't know what because there's the two things. There's the conflation between atheist and subjectivist, and then there's the conflation between like, if you're a Christian, it works the other way almost. There's a symmetry. It works the other way too.
Well, if you're a Christian, you have to be a realist?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but I had a discussion with David Paulman on my channel. He's a Christian and he's not a moral realist. And he speaks about how it's not so clear that there's any significant scriptural basis for moral realism in the Bible, nor is there any strong theological or doctrinal indication that realism is somehow necessary for Christian faith. What I find interesting is that position, as far as I understand, has caused quite a bit of backlash. Like, people are upset with him. And he holds a lot of, you could say, like heterodox views about Christianity and its relation to philosophy. And there is an unfortunate amount of social pressure to like shut up and get in line that Christians face when they hold heterodox views. From like a sociological perspective, there's something interesting about that, because people will leverage consensus as evidence of a view, but then they actually are creating the consensus. There's a manufactured consensus. If a group of people go around saying, agree with me or I'll punch you in the face, and then everybody says they agree with him, it's a little weird to then turn around and say, look, everybody agrees with us, so it's evidence we're right. Yeah. And yet Christians do this, at least some of them, and it works. And that's unfortunate, because it can give the illusion of univocality or agreement or consensus with respect to Christian doctrine, and this generalizes to politics, to religions, to philosophical views. Dogmatism can be reinforced through social forces in ways that are quite transparent, and very few people take stock of this and notice this and downward adjust their appraisal of the importance of consensus accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. There's a term in sociology where they label that type of thing that happens, is like you have the dominant culture and then you also have the dominating culture. And sometimes and often those things overlap. So like the thing that just becomes the trend also becomes more enforced because it is the trend, and people feel social pressure to adhere to this, this particular social trend or social norm or something like that. So yeah, we do that with everything. It's in every part of our life. So it's like to just assume that now that that's correct, because a lot of people agree with something, or because that should be the norm because a lot of people agree with it. People don't realize that they're you know, just reinforcing the thing by telling other people that it's the norm and that it's, you know, the dominant thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that there's discussions about that I'm not aware of. I think we should wrap it up there. So
Yeah.
if you have any final commentary thoughts, it looks like the rest of the video is not even about metaethics. I'm satisfied finishing it there. But yeah, any final
Yeah.
thoughts or words from you?
Sounds good. No, I don't think so. I just want to make it clear. Somebody said something about me, them thinking that I was an emotivist. I don't subscribe to emotivism. I don't subscribe to any particular metaethical view or normative view. I have gotten to the point where I've gotten very tired of metaethics, and I commend you for how long that you've been keeping it up, because a lot of these discussions, um, I made a comment to somebody earlier today, and hopefully no one in the comments finds this offensive. I said something like, I think a lot of certain conversations are useless because some of us believe in magic and some of us don't. And I don't believe in magic. I don't believe that there's stance independent moral facts out there. And so the conversation about it is often so confused and so imbued with like certain concepts that I just think are ridiculous. And I probably should be more open to them, but I'm not. And that's just me. But I mean, I'm still willing to have any conversations with anybody who wants to pry my brain or who is a moral realist who thinks that their view is coherent. I will always talk to moral realists, even though I don't quite enjoy it so much, and I do a lot more politics now. But that's it. Yeah, I can plug my handle, or I think it'll be in the description.
Yep. Yeah, I can. We'll talk after, and I'll add whatever you want to the description.
Cool.
All right,
right.
so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much. This is good. It was good to have a short conversation. I feel like I actually finished one of these for once. I have these like 6-part reviews, so I'm glad we got through one. All right, thanks so much for being here. All right, everybody. So check the description, like the channel, go check out Leftist Blondie's channel, do the comments, all the stuff. Check the links and everything after the video, and I'll see you all later. Take care.